Hey crafty friends, it's Maria with M. Taylor Creations. Thanks so much for coming back to check out my latest creation. Today I am making a card that's inspired by Sarah Renae Clark as well as an Instagram hop called Cube and Create Hop, and that's hosted by Sweeta at Table in the Attic and Renae at Nae's Crafty Spot, and happens the fourth Saturday of each month, so be sure to check them out if you are interested in joining us for next month's hop. So I did start off with heating up my Glimmer foil machine and just placed the PinkFresh Studio double-sided Swiss dot on top of that machine in order to get nice and warm. Okay, and then next I have die cut out 3 of the Squoval tag dies, and I went ahead and stamped some of the flowers from Simon Says Stamps long stem florals. Okay, and then I am now looking at the hot foiled panel and sentiment strip that I created. There was a little bit of overfoiling, so just using an eraser to take away the excess. It does not affect the actual intended foil area, so that works out perfectly. Okay, so as indicated, there was some inspiration from Sarah Renae Clark's color cube, and so I was inspired by the old cube number 2 and then card number 414, and there's just some like purples and pinks and a green color there. And so I've just gone through my markers and chose some different colors that I thought matched really well. The first marker I used was an Ohuhu number 81. And then from RV on Copics, I've got number 23 and 29. And then R85 and YG63. And I'll list those below in case you're interested in any of those colors. But again, I just kind of went through the markers that I had that I felt matched that color palette. Okay, and just a moment ago, I did do a little bit of a tip to tip technique just to help those two colors blend a little bit better. And then for this second floral, I'm just coloring one color for each of the little sections of the flower, and then I'll do something somewhat similar here. I don't necessarily try to blend as much on this third flower as much as the first flower anyway. So just adding some of the different colors here. In the card kit from May of 2026, it does include this stamp set as well as a stencil set, and so it's meant to look more modern, and it's more of a just kind of like an ovally look to the ink blending that you would do, as opposed to actually coloring in the flowers. But for this card, I wanted to go ahead and color in the actual flowers, and so I did not use the stencil. Okay, so that takes care of the coloring. Now I'm just kind of playing around with the placement of where I think I'm going to want the tags. I like this look, but I do end up changing it in the end. I'll go ahead and bring in a piece of white cardstock, and this is at 8.5 by 5.5, and I've just scored it at 4.25. And so I do decide I want to have a little bit of a layered look, and so I'm taking that green panel and just lining up the dots of the foil to trim off just a little bit of the panel from each of the sides. And then I also want the panel to mimic the tags, and so I'm just corner rounding the top left and the bottom right. So now it just kind of has that same look as the Squoval tag dies. Okay, and so I've dry fit this on top of my card base, and I decided I don't love it just being on the white color base, card base. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull in a panel of just a white 4.25 by 5.5 piece of cardstock. And I didn't have the color purple cardstock that would match exactly, and so I'm just going to take that purple marker that I have, and just add some color just to the edges. There's not going to be much of that panel that's going to be showing, so I'm just going to add maybe a half an inch or so worth of marker all the way around the edge, and then that's just enough in order to have that purple sort of peeking out behind that green panel, and I think that looks great. Okay, I'll go ahead and adhere the panel that's got the purple outline to the card base, just using my ATG. So that'll fit fully on the card base since that's a full 4 1/4 and 5 1/2. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and layer that green panel. And I am playing around with which way I want to add this on here because some of the dots did not foil all the way. And so I wanted that area to be at the top so that way the tag would hide some of those missing dots of foil. Okay, at this point I decided to go ahead and bring in my crocodile and some different eyelets, and I went ahead and just added a small black eyelet to each of the tags, and then brought in some Recollections baker's twine. I decided to use the black color, and I'll just add a little piece of baker's twine to each of the tags. I'm going ahead and separating the different threads from the twine in order to just add some interest to the top of each of the tags and sort of fill in that space there at the top of the card. Just using my poker tool there to separate those out. Okay, and then I do decide to go ahead and bring in just some thin foam tape. I believe this is maybe 1 mm. It's not very thick at all. And I will add some of the foam tape behind the sentiment strip. And just using my pokey tool here to take the backers off of the foam tape, and then using my reverse tweezers to help me with lining up that sentiment straight in the bottom right hand corner. And it's at this point I go ahead and decide to line these up evenly across the panel as opposed to having them sort of placed in the different areas of the card that I was sort of playing around with earlier. Okay, and so just lining up the tags, I'm going to line up the right one first to make sure that I like the spacing um, from the right and the top. And then I'll go ahead and finish adding foam tape to the other two tags. And this helps too because there was a little bit of lifting at the top of the tags from the eyelet and the twine, and so that just kind of helps even out the tag. Okay, and I'll go ahead and add the left one next, and again just making sure that the spacing is good to the left and top. And then lastly I'll add this center tag, and then this allows me to better evenly center the tag based on the amount of space that's left then between the two other tags. Okay, and then I'll bring in some diamond stickles to add just a little bit of glimmer to the card. Just adding just a little bit to the bottom of each of the flowers. And that is my card for today. I'll go ahead and share a couple of pictures just showing some detail so you can kind of see the foil here on the dots background as well as the thank you sentiment. And again, I used sort of like a brown color. I thought it just kind of matched this color palette really well. Okay, and then just another look at the card. Okay, and so if you liked this card or you like this video, if you would, please like the video below as well as subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you so much.